Before Jim Crow ever put a sign over a door, it taught black people how to move. Not how to vote, not how to argue in court. How to move. A half step too slow. A shoulder too close. A hand reaching out to keep balance when a streetcar platform suddenly shifts. That was enough. Imagine a southern town in the early 1930s. The depot is crowded. Men are trying to get to work. Women are carrying parcels. A bell rings. Someone behind you pushes forward. You catch yourself against the nearest body for less than 1 second. Then you look up. It is a white woman. Fingers brushed it. And now she is staring at you like you have crossed a line that nobody can see. But everybody in that crowd understands. A white man turns. Another one stops. The noise around you changes. You are not a pedestrian anymore. You are evidence. That was the terror of Jim Crow racial etiquette. It was not only a system of written segregation. It was a system that turned ordinary black movement into a potential offense. A glance could be read as insolence. A word could be read as defiance. A step could be read as equality. And contact, especially between a black man and a white woman, could be treated as a crime before anyone had even asked what happened. The most frightening part was not that the rules were strict. It was that the rules were invisible until somebody decided you had broken them. Most people understand Jim Crow as signs. White, colored. Separate schools, separate waiting rooms, separate train cars, separate water fountains, separate hospital wards, separate sections of cemeteries. Those signs mattered. They were public, legal, and enforced by courts, police, city councils, and state power. But beside that legal machine was another machine, older in feeling and often more dangerous in daily life. It lived in posture, tone, distance, eye contact, sidewalk space, doorways, store counters, elevators, train platforms, church steps. The small geography of bodies in public. This was racial etiquette. It did not need to be printed to be law. A black person was expected to lower the eyes, soften the voice, step aside, wait longer, speak first with deference and last with apology. A black man did not casually look at a white woman. A black child addressed white adults as sir or ma'am, even when those adults would never return the same respect. A black customer could be served last, spoken to harshly, or forced to stand while white customers moved through the space, as if the air itself belonged to them. And the sidewalk had its own rule. If white people approached, black people yielded. Not sometimes. Not when the path was narrow. Not when it was convenient. Yielding was the expectation. The body had to say what the law wanted the whole society to believe. That one group had the right to occupy space, and the other was allowed through it only on condition of submission. So a black person walking in a southern town was never just walking. He was reading angles. Heard me. Is that couple going to move left or right? Is that man drunk? Is that woman carrying something? Is there a curb I can step onto? Is there mud in the gutter? Will stepping down too early look strange? Will stepping down too late look proud? That is what oppression does when it becomes intimate. It does not only build walls, it enters the muscles. It turns a street corner into a calculation. It makes the simple act of passing another human being feel like crossing a field wired with consequences. And those consequences could change shape instantly. At the mildest level, there was public humiliation. A white man might stop a black man in the street and force an apology for being too close, walking too slowly, failing to move quickly enough, or speaking in a tone that sounded insufficiently submissive. The apology was not really about the incident. It was a performance for the crowd. It told everyone watching who had authority and who could be reduced on command. Say it again. Say it louder. Say, "Sir." Look down when you say it. The violence was already present, even before a fist was raised. At the next level, there was arrest. A moment of contact could become assault. A refusal to accept humiliation could become disorderly conduct. Standing in the wrong place could become vagrancy. Police did not have to discover the truth. Under Jim Crow, their job was often to restore the hierarchy that white people claimed had been disturbed. And beyond that was the deepest terror, mob violence. The accusation did not need to be proven. It did not even need to be coherent. It only needed to fit the story white society had already trained itself to believe, that black male presence near white womanhood was a threat. Once that story was activated, facts moved too slowly to matter. A woman said she was touched. A witness said he saw something. A rumor changed hands. A name was repeated. A group gathered. The law stepped back, or arrived, only to protect the people doing the harm. This is one of the most unbearable truths about that world. The act itself could be tiny, accidental, exaggerated, or entirely invented. It could be a hand brushing a sleeve at a counter, a shoulder graze in a crowd, a bicycle passing too near, a glance held for 1 second longer than a white witness thought appropriate. The system was not waiting for proof. It was waiting for permission. And when permission came, punishment could be immediate. This is why the rule against black men touching white women became more than etiquette. It became a tripwire. It was a line so absolute that even accidental contact could be pulled into a larger mythology of danger. White fear became evidence. White discomfort became authority. White accusation became a weapon that could travel faster than any defense. A black man could do everything the system demanded. Step off the sidewalk, keep his hands visible, avoid eye contact, say "sir," move through town with every nerve awake, and still be destroyed by what somebody claimed he did. That is the part people often miss. Jim Crow did not only punish behavior, it punished interpretation. It gave white people the power to decide what a black person's body meant in public. Too close could mean disrespect. Too quiet could mean plotting. Too confident could mean insolence. Too successful could mean needing to be put back in place. And once meaning belonged to the people with power, innocence became almost useless. Parents understood this with terrifying clarity. Black mothers and fathers taught survival the way other parents taught manners, not because they accepted the system, but because they knew children could be killed for misunderstanding it. Do not run near a white woman. Do not reach for anything she drops. Do not stand in a doorway and make her pass around you. Do not laugh too loudly in the street. Do not answer a white man with a clever sentence. Do not look angry, even when you are being insulted. Do not let your hand be misunderstood. These lessons were not about respect. They were emergency drills. A child learned that the public world had 2 layers. The visible one, where people bought goods, waited for trains, crossed streets, went to church, and walked home from work. And the invisible one, where every movement carried a possible accusation. Imagine growing up inside that double vision. Your body is young, but it is already being trained to shrink. Your mind is trying to be a child, but it is also mapping exits, moods, faces, distances, and risks. You are not allowed the ordinary carelessness of childhood. You are taught that your body can be turned into a case against you. That kind of training does not disappear when the day ends. It becomes a nervous system. It becomes the old man who still steps aside before he knows why. It becomes the woman who watches her son's hands in a store. It becomes the father who hears laughter behind him and immediately checks who is there. It becomes the habit of making yourself less visible in places where visibility has never been neutral. The body remembers the rules long after the signs come down. But there is a second truth that exposes the lie at the center of the whole system. Jim Crow society claimed that its obsession with black male contact and white womanhood was about protection. It wrapped its violence in the language of purity, safety, and honor. But that was not protection. It was control. Because while a black man could face death for an alleged brush against a white woman's sleeve, white men assaulted black women with near total impunity. The same society that claimed to be terrified of unwanted contact in one direction ignored, excused, and protected sexual violence in the other. Black women's pain was not treated as evidence of a crime. Too often, it was treated as something the legal order did not need to see. That asymmetry tells the truth. The rules were not designed to protect women. They were designed to protect hierarchy. White bodies were treated as sacred territory, were treated as available, suspicious, or disposable. The system was not confused. It was consistent. It valued dignity in one direction and denied it in the other. It turned white vulnerability into a public emergency and black vulnerability into silence. This is why the sidewalk matters. Because the sidewalk was not only pavement. It was a stage where the whole racial order had to be performed again and again. Every step off the curb confirmed the story. Every lowered gaze confirmed the story. Every forced apology confirmed the story. Every punished touch confirmed the story. The story was simple and monstrous. You do not stand equal here. Proximity was so dangerous. Not because bodies came close. Bodies come close in every crowded society. Markets, stations, sidewalks, shops, church doors, stairways, wagons, streetcars. Human life requires nearness. The danger was what nearness implied. If two people occupy the same narrow space, neither one is naturally above the other. If a black man and a white woman are pushed shoulder to shoulder by a crowd, the physical world has ignored the racial order. If a black person does not step away quickly enough, the body appears to claim equal right to the path. And in a system built on artificial distance, equality can look like an attack. That is the hidden mechanism. Terror was never really about a sleeve, a glove, a shoulder, or a staircase. It was about the collapse of distance. A hierarchy needs space between people. It needs rituals that keep that space visible. It needs the person below to keep proving they know they are below. When that ritual fails, even by accident, the system experiences the failure as rebellion. So it punishes the body that got too close. This is also why accusations were so useful. They allowed violence to disguise itself as defense. They turned the enforcement of white supremacy into a story about protecting innocence. They gave mobs a script. They gave newspapers a phrase. They gave officials an excuse to look away. Touch became a symbol. A rumor became a verdict. A body became a warning. And the warning was sent not only to the accused, but to everyone like him. Watch your hands. Watch your eyes. Watch the distance. Remember where you are. By the mid-1960s, the legal architecture of Jim Crow had begun to break. Federal civil rights legislation struck at the public systems of segregation. Voting protections attacked the machinery that had kept black citizens politically suppressed. The signs came down. The legal claim to separate public worlds lost its standing. That mattered profoundly. But the end of a sign is not the end of a reflex. A society can remove a rule from a wall while leaving the rule inside bodies, habits, fears, and assumptions. This is not the same as Jim Crow. It is important to say that clearly. A black man today is not living under the same legal regime that governed the American South in the 1920s or 1930s. But echoes do not require identical conditions. They require repetition. A purse clutched a little tighter. A car door locked as someone approaches. A security guard appearing in the aisle. An elevator going quiet. A hand kept visible to avoid suspicion. A path adjusted before anyone else notices, becoming conscious of itself because other bodies have learned to treat it as a threat. These are not old laws walking around in modern clothes. They are learned responses. Some are carried by black people as caution. Some are carried by white people as fear or suspicion they may not even name. Some are reinforced by media, policing, housing patterns, family stories, jokes, warnings, and 1,000 ordinary signals about who belongs where and whose presence must be explained. The past does not survive only in textbooks. Sometimes it survives as a flinch. And that is why this history is so hard to face. It is not safely buried in courthouse archives. It is not only a photograph of segregated signs or a paragraph in a school book. It is a history of bodies in space. It is about who had to move, who got to stay, who could accuse, who would be believed, who was protected, and who had to rehearse survival before leaving home. When people say Jim Crow was a system, they often mean laws. But it was more than that. It was a training program for the entire society. It trained white people to experience black nearness as disrespect or danger. It trained black people to anticipate punishment before punishment arrived. It trained children to understand distance before they understood politics. It trained crowds to become courts, fear to speak with authority. It trained violence to call itself order. And once a society trains bodies that deeply, legal reform has to do more than change rules. It has to confront memory. Not sentimental memory, muscle memory, institutional memory, the memory of sidewalks, counters, platforms, elevators, store aisles, and streets. The memory of having to make yourself smaller so someone else could feel larger. This is the meaning of that 1-second brush on a crowded depot platform. It was not small because the touch was small. It was enormous because an entire system was waiting behind it. A system that could take a mistake and call it a crime. Discomfort and call it danger. Take a rumor and call it proof. Take a man and turn him into an example. Take a community and force it to learn fear all over again. The cruelty of Jim Crow racial etiquette was that it made domination look like manners. It made submission look like politeness. It made terror look like common sense. It hid the machinery of white supremacy inside gestures so ordinary that later generations could be tempted to overlook them. Step aside. Look down. Say, sir. Do not touch. Do not stand too close. Small rules. Huge purpose. Because the point was never the sidewalk. Was never the sidewalk. The point was to make sure everyone knew who owned the space, who merely passed through it, and what could happen when the body that was supposed to yield did not disappear quickly enough. If this history unsettles you, that is the right response. It should unsettle us, because a country cannot understand itself by studying only the laws it wrote down. It also has to study the rules it taught people to obey without writing them anywhere. The unwritten rules are often where the deepest truths are hiding. And in the Jim Crow South, one of those truths was this. For black people, public space was never truly public. It was conditional. It was watched. It was dangerous. It was dangerous. And sometimes it could turn against you in less than a second. So the next time you see an old photograph of a sidewalk, a train station, a storefront, or a town square from that era, do not just look at the buildings. Look at the distance between bodies. Look at who is standing where. Look at who has room. Look at who is waiting. Look at who is moving aside, because that distance was not empty. It was the system itself. And once you learn how to see it, you cannot unsee it.